Hey everyone, welcome back to this week's session of In the Studio with Brad, where for the next 2 hours approximately, depending on what kind of head of steam I get, we shall be drawing stuff for the Goodman Games Dungeon Crawl Classics Dying Earth game. This is going to be our big product for this year in terms of original games. So I have already been informed that for the next several weeks, I'm going to basically be doing nothing but Dying Earth. So we know what we're all going to be doing. Anybody who wants to who follows me on social media can see works in progress, sketches, whatever tidbits I think I'm allowed to share, including probably that you should probably all go and invest in thesauruses. I am currently rereading the Dying Earth series on my Kindle, and there are entire paragraphs where I'm going like, wow, this is really beautifully written and wonderfully eloquent, and what the hell are they even saying? So couple of things to get out of the way first. I thought I would show off some of what I've been working on the past week. This is the piece that I was not able to do last week, but I think you can see that it is now completely done. This I literally finished just last night. I'm pretty happy with the way it came out. Okay, so what else have we got to show off here? I've been a busy boy today. In case you're kind of wondering, this is the original. That's once I've run it through Photoshop and had some fun with the noise function. And these are all sketches that I have worked on today. I have not, in fact, even gotten back approvals or revisions back from the boss. So we're just going to set these to the side. Hold on just a second, guys. Let's clear off the table a little bit. Now, we also have these three sketches. Actually, these two are definitely approved. I'm not sure whether this has been approved yet. I will have to double check my emails. But we have these two that we can work on this evening. A wind stick devil carrying a, I forget what it's called, but it's basically a oxen-sized pig. Whatever floats your boat, guys. And this is a basil, which is kind of a cross between a praying mantis and a cat. You really got to wonder sometimes where these people come up with their ideas. I'm not even sure I want to know. Unless maybe they just have a big book of animals and they with names on the wall and they throw darts at the wall. Sometimes I think that's how H.P. Lovecraft came up with some of his monster descriptions. Other detail, we will not be broadcasting next week so that Manly Mike Curtis can talk about whatever he usually talks about on Monday nights. So if you have nothing better to do, why don't you tune in and torture him, okay? Our next show will be Valentine's Day, and if you are done spending time with your better half and you have nothing better to do, go ahead and tune in. But understand if you want to skip and just watch the Twitch show. As for us, we're not even worrying about trying to get in anywhere, but I would like to try and go to a fairly nice restaurant for once. with the advent of COVID, the idea of dining out has become kind of a scary and disheartening proposition because nothing really kind of reminds you that things are not going well to be paying a small fortune for supper and everybody is like 10 feet apart and wearing masks and trying not to avoid coughing or anything. Not that I really want my waiters to be coughing, but still. So with any luck, I should have plenty of new content by then, probably some new jokes and new facts. Hint, hint, dear. So if you do plan on tuning in on Valentine's Day, be prepared for a whole plethora of dad jokes related to Hallmark Card's favorite holiday. Oh, a plug for my wife. As some of you know, my wife has a side gig besides being like the most awesome customer service person in the history of the gaming industry, where she makes custom greeting cards. And with the holiday coming up, she's quite happy to take custom orders for mail order. Her prices are very reasonable. Of course, I have to say that, or, I may not make it till Valentine's Day. But any of you who are on Facebook, if you want to look up Aunt Jessie's Handmade Treasures, I obviously am somewhat biased, but I can tell you a story straight from the boss that just what sent Joseph, I believe it was a Christmas card, because we're kind of old-fashioned that way. We still like sending Christmas cards. And Joseph was just awestruck by the quality of the card. It's like, where did Jess find such a beautiful card? I believe it was almost exactly what he said. And April kind of, Joe, look at the back of the card. Jess made this herself. So, something to think about, kids. We only ship domestic, unfortunately, because if nothing else, as you probably all know, shipping prices have gotten kind of silly. But if you order soon, you can almost definitely get a handmade custom card, literally one of a kind, in time to send to a loved one in time for Valentine's Day.
Also for Valentine's Day, a little early, but Jess has redeemed a random Joker fact.
Okay. Do. Drum roll, please, kids. Okay, all of you who have tuned in before, you know the drill. If you value your Sandy, you'll log off right now, and you might want to cover your ears just as for safety's sake. Oh, hey, this is something normal. In their lifetime, the average person walks the equivalent of 5 times around the earth. Now, how they come up with a statistic like that, I have no bloody clue. I know some people that would be hard pressed to walk around, their living room 5 times. in their lifetime. And then we have people like my sister-in-law, who probably has walked around the earth probably about 9 times by now. She's one of those people that wears an Apple Watch, you know, the one that keeps track of your steps, and she regularly gets beep, beep, beep. Are you trying to wear us out? Thank you. We're tired now. We want to rest. And that's on a normal day. Do, 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 do. You know how some people, you know, they hit middle age and all of a sudden their metabolism slows way down like mine did. I think Mary Lou's metabolism has picked up speed as she's gotten older. At the rate she's going, when the time comes, they're basically going to have to, you know, shoot her with a stun gun to get her to slow down long enough that they can get her to the funeral home, I swear. Some people are just that way. My mom was that way, by the way. You know, completely irrelevant to gaming, but and Jess can testify to this. So my mom has cancer, and it's a bad cancer. You know, she in fact did not make it through, but she goes to chemo one day, and anyone who knows or has ever dealt with anyone who has cancer knows chemo is a brute. You are sick as a dog after you've had a round of chemo. And this was nothing unusual. So mom comes home, and it's about maybe 11:30 in the morning, okay? And starts changing her clothes immediately. And Jess is like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm meeting a friend for a steak lunch. Yes, she had been home from chemo all of maybe 7 minutes, and she was heading out, getting ready to head out the door again. If you ever wonder why Jess and I have gray hairs now, you know. That's one of those family things where it's like, can I be an orphan, please? Okay. So somewhat more related to the task at hand, I am working my way through Jack Vance's Dying Earth series, and I'm most of the way through the second novel, Eyes of the Overworld, where we are introduced to the character of Cujo the Clever. And Cujo is kind of the classic Dying Earth character in that while he's kind of charming at the same time, you also is like, this guy is going to earn his comeuppance really, really bad in one of these stories. Oops, sorry about that, folks.
Got a question for you. Does this is from Grape Ape. Does Brad ever do digital drawing? Would you ever consider switching? Why or why not?
I do not do any digital drawing. Okay, for first off, I do a lot of colorizing in Photoshop. And I think I discussed some of that last week just because of the convenience of it. But in terms of actually switching over to drawing on the iPad, I think it would take too long at this point for me to really repurpose my skills to working digitally. I remember talking to an artist, I believe his name is Drew Tucker. He used to do a lot of work for Alderac Entertainment for Legend of Five Rings. And I remember him saying that when he made the jump from traditional media to working digitally, it took him basically 6 months of dedicated work just to learn the tools to the point where he wasn't having to go like, how do I do this? How do I do that? How do I do this? And I don't know. I personally am just old fashioned enough that I like the feel of actually holding a pen and actually physically drawing. Also, I have a huge collection of paints, pens, so on and so forth, and I certainly do not want to just have them all go to waste. And as I believe I mentioned last week, it seems to me that way too often the artists who rely mostly on digital, you can rarely tell them apart compared to artists who still work traditionally. Okay. But thank you for that question. I mean, I know in some ways it would be much easier, but I don't feel that I can justify taking that kind of time off from my job. Also, Goodman Games has kind of staked out the whole almost retro look. And part of that is making, whenever possible, the artwork the old fashioned way. If you notice, compared to a lot of other companies, our stuff is, well, it's very retro. And
Another.
also,
Oh, sorry.
go ahead. And also, a lot of the artists that I admire the most worked before the digital era. So, in my mind, what I do helps keep their memory alive. Okay, next question.
So the next question is: has Brad ever switched it up and done any drawing with a cartography pen?
Not quite sure what you mean by a cartography pen. So I'm going to have to say no. I have you, or are you thinking calligraphy pens?
That might be what it is.
Yes, I have used calligraphy pens in the past. Matter of fact, for the longest time, I was using as my preferred tool a Pentel calligraphy pen, but they stopped making them. And yes, I was a very sad puppy when they did that. But such is life. There are a couple companies that still make calligraphy pens of the variety that I like, but most of them are not of a quality that I'm happy with. There's a company out of England that I used to use, but I would literally only get a few weeks of use out of each pen until the barrel, this part, would just start shattering. And I'm like, this is no good. I don't, I can't really justify going out every month and buying a whole new pen. There we go. So if you mean a calligraphy pen, yes, I have. Like I said, I'm just not quite sure what you mean if you were talking about a cartography pen.
Yeah, he's saying he meant calligraphy.
Okay, no problem. I know sometimes autocorrect can mess with your mind. And a lot of these pens, like these Winsor Newtons and these Maruskas, I believe I forget, just found them off of they are so good that they kind of make using one of those calligraphy pens kind of redundant. And also these, which she found from some place in Japan. She got like a dozen of these for like $15, and they are utterly amazing. Matter of fact, I think we got these at near the beginning of the pandemic, when we started going like, I don't think we're going to be shopping in the real world for a while, folks. I'm not a big fan of Mr. Bezos, but I have to admit he's kind of become he and his company have kind of become a necessary evil, especially right now. One wonderful thing, though, especially in the digital era here, is that as long as you can get a good black line, it doesn't really matter how fancy a pen you have. Some people would like, oh, you need to have blah 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 blah, some incredibly expensive tool. And I'm like, why? It's going to be digitized as black and white. you know and a big thank you to my wife for making sure that I have plenty of water for this evening so that I can continue talking, even I start getting a little bit hoarse here. We learned our lessons from last week. On the other hand, she kind of likes it if I get really, really hoarse at the end over the course of a show, because hey, then he doesn't have to put up with me talking after the show. Just kidding, dear. There we go. Now, anything else going on in chat?
Let me check real quick.
Okay.
Zombie Folly does have a question, but before that, Jess did inform me that that cartography and calligraphy pens are the same.
Oh, okay.
That's cool. Zombie Folly asks, rather than the paper towel method, have you ever worn a drawing glove?
Yes, as a matter of fact, and I found one earlier. I was having bad problems with my arthritis a few years ago, and we actually got one from, believe it or not, the actual local Hobby Lobby, which worked wonderfully. But then for some reason, and I am not complaining at all, my arthritis seems to have more or less disappeared. What I did find with the drawing glove was that it only covers like this much of your hand. So if you have anything on your fingers, you're still going to be risking transferring skin oil to the drawing paper. And you don't want that, kids. I think you can get them at Walmart. In fact, in the pharmacy section, same area that you get like ankle braces and stuff like that. So I've actually just been using a paper towel or such like this for many, many years. I think this came from Taco Bell, as a matter of fact. So if you're working at the drive-through and somebody comes in through and asks for as many extra paper towels as they can spare, there's a safe bet they're either a very messy eater or they're a commercial artist. There we go, kids.
Skunkworks asked, what is your go-to Taco Bell order?
That I can actually answer fairly easily, though some places don't even have them officially on the menu anymore. A chili cheese burrito. Now, for some reason, they've actually become expensive, and I don't know why. But you used to be able to get chili cheese burritos, and it's literally just some cheese, some chili meat, and wrapped up in a burrito punk, and it's done. You used to be able to get them for like 99 cents, and now they're like $1.89, which is ridiculous. Because it's not like they've changed the ingredients, and I'm pretty sure the quality of the meat that they use at Taco Bell has not gone up that much, kids. Now for actual Mexican, I love the huevos with chorizo, which is basically a fancy way of saying scrambled eggs with chorizo sausage in it. But it sounds so much more impressive to say, you know, huevos con chorizo. Also, if you say that, rather than eggs with Mexican sausage, you can probably charge an extra $4 a plate. Do. Oh, before I forget, also, don't forget that we're going to be having a drawing at the end of the season, and I'll let you know when that is, to be precise, because I'm not quite sure. Lana, is this the 5th or 6th episode?
This is actually like episode 8 of season 2.
Episode 8?
Yeah, we've done 8.
Good Lord. Okay. I think I will have to be calling or emailing Los Bossman. He usually likes to do seasons of 10 episodes. So we'll have to see. But otherwise, we should basically be assuming that we will be finalizing this then in a few weeks. And then it is up to him when we want to restart. So everyone, email into Goodman Games, absolutely screaming that you want season 3 of In the Studio with Brad as soon as possible.
Also, Joan of Arc, welcome Joan, has redeemed a random Joker fact.
Okay, give me 1 second, Joan. I just want to finish this last piece there. Do. Okay. Oops. There we go. Now, this is the kind of international tourism I am thoroughly in favor of. The average person, we seem to have lots of average people on the factoids tonight. Besides walking around the earth 5 times in their lifetime, the average person living in Sweden eats about 22 pounds of chocolate a year. That's actually a lot of chocolate, folks. And that's like almost 2 pounds of chocolate a week. No, 2 pounds of chocolate a month. That's almost like, what, at least 8 ounces of chocolate a week? Yeah, that's not that awful much. Sounds a lot more impressive when you say it's 22 pounds a year. On the other hand, it's still better than the other wonderful statistic about the average person eating approximately what, 10 flies over the course of their, or 10 spiders over the course of their lifetime. And that's another one where it's like, I'm not sure I want to know how they come up with that statistics other than maybe, the food safety stuff, where, you're allowed to have a certain number of insect parts per, et cetera, et cetera. I hope. I don't know. It's one of those things. I don't think I really want to know too much. Unless you're, Uncle Fester from the Addams Family, then I'm pretty sure he eats 10 or 20, spiders a week.
So, Odd has a question.
Okay.
How many tries or, like, I guess, iterations do you have with your sketch before you actually decide that you're ready to ink it?
Um, actually, quite often, and please accept my apologies if this sounds arrogant. I very rarely have to go in and do more than one sketch. I think I've just been at this for so long that once you give me an idea what I'm supposed to be drawing, for example, the Bazil here that I'm working on tonight, I think my brain just kind of goes into and I often pretty much go and it's straight from my head to the paper without too much torture of figuring out how to lay it out. And like I said, I mean, that might just be because I've been at this for so long. I'm celebrating my basically my 35th year as some sort of a commercial artist this year. So, it just comes with the territory. Now, every once in a while, I do have to hit Google pretty hard trying to find the proper material, source material. For example, I had to go and find a picture of a kitten for this book picture. I don't know what it says that I could, draw a picture of a crazed insect easier than I could figuring out how to include the details of a kitten. But hey, that's why I draw monsters rather than stock photography for Cat Fancy magazine. Oh,
So, Joan is wondering if you've ever had a major accident, quote unquote accident, while drawing or inking that has ruined a piece to the point where you had to start all over.
Oh yeah. As a matter of fact, very early on in my art career, when I was illustrating actually the second game that I ever did, I had the big pot of ink here because I was trying to do some stuff with a quote unquote pen, and I knocked the bottle of ink over, and it was a full bottle of ink. Uh, happily, it was the early afternoon, so I was able to go to the local hardware store and get a big bottle of crud cutter and several rolls of paper towels later. I was able to clean up the mess, but the drawing was definitely past being able to be salvaged. And that's another reason why you really want to be careful when you're working with, real ink and such, because it is an utter, how does my wife phrase it? A witch spelled with a B to get out of carpet. Do-do-do. If you plan on doing a lot of stuff that requires you to have actual ink open like that, it would probably not be a bad idea to go to your local office supply store and get one of those plastic pads that you see them where it basically you use it to like protect the floor of your office, but it's going to be a lot better if you have to try and clean up ink off of that rather than out of carpet. That's another reason why I like to use these kind of pens, because even if worst comes to worst, I'm going to drop this on the floor and it's going to leave a dot doink on the carpet, and you might ruin the nib, but you're not going to ruin the entire carpet. There we go. Hold on just a second, folks.
Got another random Joker fact redeemed.
Okay, give me 1 second. I just want to do this last little bit here on the bezel's belly. There we go. Okay. Dun, 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 dun. Plus, we got to use up these jokes so we have some fresh ones to start with next season. It took Erno Rubik, the creator of Rubik's Cube, about 1 month to solve the cube after he created it. That doesn't surprise me. I mean, you only have what, like 4 quadrillion possible solutions to Rubik's Cube? Hold on a moment, folks. Okay. Let's finish drawing these whiskers while we're thinking about it.
Got another random Joker fact by Joan because, in her words, since he isn't talking, lol.
Well, sorry. Okay, well, this makes perfect sense. The first can opener wasn't invented until almost 50 years after the invention of the can, which really kind of makes you think that dear Mr. Bonaparte really wasn't thinking too well when he commissioned the invention of canned food. I think he was too busy going scratching himself, and that's why his hand is actually always seen inside his jacket. Sorry. Oops. Sorry, I got off track trying to figure out where the next step of this illustration should go. Okay. I'll just Photoshop out this crop mark when I'm done. So anybody got any trivia questions to try and challenge me with?
No trivia, but Joan is trying to remember and failing, like I am, to remember what the crop marks mean.
Oh, normally when I get a picture, and it's usually a little bit more precise than something like this, it'll be like reproduction size will be 3 inches tall by 3.5 inches wide. So what I'll do, I do everything a quarter larger than that, but I will, let's see if I can find just a little bit of scrap paper here. This will work. Okay. So what I'll do is say this is going to be the size that it's going to be reproduced now. So I will do the actual image about like so. And the crop marks are so I can keep track of where to keep the illustration within. Also in Photoshop, it makes it a lot easier to draw the boxes because I can literally just make a mask, what they call mask, which is a specific selected area within the document. and I will just go stroke, which is their term for a frame, and it will automatically draw the mask exactly as a perfect circle or whatever the shape of your mask is. Okay. Okay. So back to the happy land of Basil's here. Okay. Just to make my life a little bit easier at the end here. Here's also one of the advantages of working in Photoshop. If I haven't mentioned this before, there is a function they call flood fill in Photoshop, which is literally just you select an area, and rather than having to actually fill it in like I am right now with this particular section, you can just select that area, hit flood fill, and it will fill that whole area with whatever color you selected. It's a huge, huge time saver. The catch is, of course, you have to make sure that your mask area is only as large as what you want to fill. Because if you hit the flash fill area, flash fill, excuse me, without an area selected, it will fill the entire document with that color, which means you might lose a whole lot of work. There we go.
Got a compliment here from Odd that I thought would be nice to share with you. They
Okay.
say that your black and white are very good, and sometimes they're so good that your black and white seem more colorful than pictures with color.
Thank you. I think some artists do, in fact, use color more as a crutch than they really have any right to. You have to have a strong black and white beginning to make for a good colorized picture. I can't speak for those artists who work from the word go in color, but I always try to make sure that the color pieces that I'm going to colorize are very strong to start with, because I figure at that point, hold on, I'm looking for the proper pen. No. Give me just a second, guys. Honest. I do know what I'm doing. And if you believe that, annoying. No, I want to save that particular nib for as long as I can. Okay, there we go. But what also then happens is a lot of artists go straight to color without really bothering to learn all the ins and outs of the craft of illustration. And I partially blame this on some publishers who basically act that if you even work in black and white, you're kind of a second class citizen. I will not name any names, but I was basically once told I should get out of the industry because I don't do exclusively color. Obviously, I didn't take that person's advice. Every once in a while, though, you will still get people who are just like, oh my God. I remember talking to the then art director of White Wolf Games, who was utterly gobsmacked at the fact that I worked in black and white. Is this pen? Literally, you'd have thought that I had grown a second head the way he was acting. Now, there are advantages to using digital, even if you are just doing black and white. But at least to me, there are also some disadvantages, one of which is, from the sheer point of view of being a collector of artwork, and I know some of you people are collectors of artwork, when it's just digital, there's nothing to sell. I mean, you can show off that you own blah, blah, blah's artwork if it's a JPEG, but there's not going to be quite the awe factor of you actually own this original by this or that artist. Oh, hold on just a second, folks. Excuse me. You'll notice that a lot of the sketch is actually very tight, but I still wanted to leave myself some wiggle room to tweak details as I'm going. So basically, when you turn in a sketch to an art director, sometimes it is essentially more of a, this is how I think it's going to turn out, rather than a definite, here is how it's going to turn out. So being an art director basically sometimes just involves looking at the squiggles that an artist sends you and you interpreting them like, I think this is what this guy said is meaning to draw. I know sometimes I've been so loose with sketches, I will literally, in the notes of the email, I will basically say, this is what's supposed to be going on in this sketch. That's usually if it's my third or fourth or fifth little sketch that I've turned out in a single day, and I'm getting kind of brain farted, excuse my French. There we go.
So, question from Odd. When you
Okay.
make a drawing, usually how long until it is out in the wild, like it's published or whatever? Like this one, how soon will it be in places where everyone can see it?
I am at this point assuming this is going to be our big Gen Con release, if not earlier. Jess, do we have an ETA for when Dying Earth is supposed to actually drop? You'll have to look and chat for that. As far as I know, it's a Gen Con release. Beyond that, it varies very much by the client. I have some jobs that are still sitting in my client's inbox, sometimes 2 and 3 years after I've turned in the job. And I'm like, are you ever actually going to get around to doing this? And at that point, I'm usually like, I'm glad I didn't wait to a pay upon publication. So, and unfortunately, the gaming industry is volatile enough that there have been times when I have turned in a job and then the company goes out of business before it ever goes to press. And that's just one of those times when you chalk it up to, oh, well, whatever, move on to the next job. With the breakdown of the standard distribution channels, like they used to do to get comics and gaming stores into the 2000s, things have changed a lot. It used to be that you'd turn in a job, and usually it was no more than about 6 weeks until you could wander into your local gaming store or comic book store and see your stuff on the shelves. Now, with everything being done via Kickstarter and such, it can get, it's a little bit less predictable. Hold on just a second, guys.
Joan did say that at some point she'd like to be able to see you with a plain piece of paper just doing the sketch.
Oh, okay. I will try to remember that for next session then. I have a feeling this is going to take up inking this is going to take up most of this session. I will warn you that sometimes it is kind of like I sit there for sometimes upwards of half an hour or more as my brain is kind of processing the information. So, okay.
Another question. Do you get ownership back on the drawings if the company goes under? I don't know. I would assume that you own the pieces anyway.
Um, there is a little bit of a murkier area. Generally, you're allowed to keep ownership of the originals, but the uh, ownership of the digital image, the concept of the image, and the reproduction rights varies from company to company. Goodman Games likes to own all rights. Some other companies, they're just like, hey, give us first rights. And if you want to resell those rights after, the day after our book hits the press, fine. It really kind of depends on the company. As a matter of fact, there is one company that the publication has been delayed for over a year, and the rights to the cover have already reverted to me. Because I was part of the agreement when I did the cover. Some companies do own all rights. For example, I used to do a lot of work for the company that did BattleTech, as I believe I've mentioned, but they own all rights. Likewise, from the days when I worked at Game Designers Workshop and I did a lot of work for Traveler, since that was all on the clock, all that stuff is technically owned by whoever owns the Traveler license these days. But technically, Joseph has a huge backlog of my artwork that he could use at any time if he so chose to. Since I've been doing work for him for essentially 20 years now. But quite often when you do artwork like this, yeah, it becomes, basically the property of the publisher. Matter of fact, there was one time I did some work for BattleTech and thought nothing more of it. I collected my check, I got my contributor's copy, day, moved on to the next job, obviously. And several months later, actually, no, quite a few months later, I was at my local comic book store, comic book / gaming store, and I saw that one of the new tech, they had one of the new BattleTech readouts. For those of you who are not that familiar, they're basically just big books of the different types of mechs that you can use in the game. Oh, cool. So I had nothing better to do. I started flipping through the book, and lo and behold, there was a piece I had done for them for another book, and they had reused it for this tech readout. I was kind of flattered, actually, that they liked the piece that I had done so much they had chosen to reuse it. Okay. So next time I happened to be on the phone to them, I asked for a freebie copy, and they were quite happy to send it to me. This thing's closer to being done than I thought.
Question from Skunkworks. After 30 plus years in the industry, do you think conditions are getting better or worse for artists?
Worse. I prefer not to go into details, but let's just say that in general, the the page rates for artists have not improved significantly. And I have some friends who have actually basically retired from doing any work in the industry for that exact reason, because they're getting paid the same per page that they were in the 90s. Now, Joseph, and I'm not trying to suck up to the boss here, does pay significantly better than some of these other companies. But the simple fact is also some companies like to try to see how cheaply they can get artists, and some companies simply can't afford it. Post Magic, sales figures in general, unless your name is at D&D, have gone down drastically. Products that used to sell 1,000 copies a year are now lucky if they sell 100 copies a year. And there's really no correcting this situation. I will not name any names, but I remember talking to a former client that had what was considered at the time a relatively successful game. Would kind of be considered a second tier game, I believe is the industry term for it. And his game had been out for like 3 years. And he informed me that he had sold 600 copies in 3 years. Break that down by how many you sell a month, and that's actually a fairly pathetic number. And this game was considered a success. Like I said, Joseph does take pretty good care of his people. But there is an upper limit to how much you can, how much you can afford to pay when you're only selling X number of products. Giving Games manages to make that X number of products fairly significant, but it's still only a shadow of what the gaming industry was selling in the 80s and 90s before Magic. Okay. Short form, if you want to make a living doing gaming art, plan on having an outside job. I am extremely lucky, and I am eternally grateful to Joseph that he has given me so much work that I don't have to have an outside job. But up until about 4 years ago, I had a real world job. Okay.
Are you a local celebrity at your comic or hobby shop?
Nope. No. I will use a line that a friend of mine that used to be a writer for White Wolf once told me that really kind of let's just say put the kibosh on me ever thinking that I would be a gaming celebrity. For any of you people who play Vampire, this was the guy that created the Sabbat, the other main organization for the entire Vampire the Universe game, Vampire the Masquerade universe. Excuse me, while I try to arrange sentences into a form that make any sense at all. And Stephen Brown made the comment to me on the phone one day that being a celebrity game creator put you on the same level of fame as the manager of the local Wendy's. Wow. I'm glad to know that after 34 years, I'm almost as famous as the guy that serves you the chili with the extra crackers. So, does that answer your question? Wahaha. At the same time, every once in a while, you do get caught. I remember a time several years ago, I had just gotten off an early shift at that real world job that I was mentioning a few minutes ago. And I was walking to my apartment. And this car, suddenly stops. And it's like, hey, you're the guy from Dragon Magazine. Because I was doing some work for them at the time. I'm like, hello? I do not know how he knew who I was, but nonetheless. There was another time shortly after I stopped work at Game Designers Workshop. I was still freelancing for them, but I had moved back to the Ohio area. And I'm sitting at the booth of the gaming company that I was associating with at the time. And a guy wanders by our booth, looks down, sees me drawing, and I was working on, obviously, the latest job for Traveler. He's like, hey, you're the Varger guy. And I'm like, who, what, huh? Who? I guess I shouldn't have been too surprised that in a gaming environment, someone might recognize at least my work, but it still kind of caught me off guard. Ironically, and I've made this comment more than once, I seem to be almost more famous with art directors than I do with the general gaming populace. There was one time, and I was at Gen Con, and I stopped by the booth of a company called Expeditious Retreat Press, which I believe they're basically gone now, except I think their stuff is still available on DriveThruRPG. And I introduced myself to the guy behind the booth, Joseph Brown. He's like, oh, you're Brad. Oh, good. This saves me time because I was going to email you about a job next week. He already had it on his to-do list after Gen Con to call and offer me work. And I thought that was terribly funny. There was another time when Mike Neistel Uh, and some of you may recognize kind of the name from the old D&D, as in like, what is it, Nystul's interposing hand? Is that the spell? Anyhow, his son is very active in the gaming industry, and he was running a small independent game company that had like the coolest project in the world. So I wanted in on this project. So I tracked down his booth at Gen Con, and I had my portfolio and I had my briefcase full of art samples, and I'm like, Mr. Nystol, and I'm pretty sure my voice went up an octave or two. I started doing my what I've come to refer to as my freelancer song and dance. And he just stops and looks at me. I know who you are, Brad. Let's see your stuff. Okay. So yeah, I always thought that was funny that, that I was all prepared to have to do like the whole 9 yards of I've done this, this, and this, and this. And he just looked annoyed at me that I didn't automatically assume that he knew who I was. That, by the way, was the start of a friendship that he still goes on today, even though he doesn't do much in the gaming industry anymore. So yeah, but no, there's very little fame to be had in the gaming industry per se. And for every Monty Cook you out there, there's a dozen people like me, dozen or more people like me, who this is the most fun job in the world, but we don't expect it to be any sort of fame and glory. Except, like I said, except that, every once in a while at a convention, the people will know who you are. They might not know exactly know who you are, but they recognize your artwork, or they recognize you from a project that you've worked on. Oh, also another tip for you don't expect your favorite gaming celebrity to match the reality of what they work on at all. That Stephen Brown fellow that I just talked about is the creator of Sabat. Okay, you would think the creator of one of the most infamous portions of the game Vampire the Masquerade, the Vampire's Vampire organization. You would think he's going to be tall and thin and dark and very elegantly dressed, maybe with a widow's peak or some silly expletive deleted like that. Okay. So I met Stephen Brown the first time, and he's like 5'3", maybe 275 pounds, and he was wearing a bright orange and red Hawaiian shirt. This was about as far from what I would envision a white wolf goth, creative mastermind from wearing. Likewise, the last time I got to meet Mark Reinhagen went on one of his rare visits to the States here, because he lives in the country of Georgia now, not the state, mind you. For anybody who has ever met Mark, he's left his whole goth shtick behind long, long ago. And what I thought was funny was, I mean, he actually came by the Goodman Games booth because we had not seen each other for many years. And it's like, Brad, and crush. This bear hug that damn near sent me to the hospital. But again, don't expect people to match what you think they should look like at all. Because most of us are fairly normal workaday guys. There's quite a few of the people attached to Goodman Games that if you were to just see them on the street, you would not think that anything about them working in the gaming industry or anything. And again, a lot of us, this is not a full-time job. This is a side gig, a fun side gig, but a side gig nonetheless. Okay, I'm not going to worry about trying to do the details on the wings quite yet. I'm going to see what I can do in Photoshop and maybe trace those. So give me just a second, folks. Hey, Joan, you might be getting your wish a little bit early here. Okay, there we go. This is going to be for the third book in the box set for Dying Earth. And it is book one. Of course, I've got to find the proper page. Here we go. Okay. This is for like one of the magical items, and it's kind of like a very strange magical baton. Flip, flip, flip. Here we go. Yeah, it's a magical baton, an evil magical baton, by the way. And as you can see, this is proportionally the same size, about 25% larger. And this specifies the size that it can be. Ta-da! With me so far, folks? Okay, so I want to draw an evil baton. And what I probably want to do is first off, draw some sort of a hand holding the baton. Sorry about that. Now, one thing that I still sometimes do, and I'd rather actually have it extend a little bit beyond the shape, is you have to be careful when you're doing a sketch not to draw it right to the edge, because then when it's going to look kind of silly if the details of the main details of the drawing are straight to the edge. So what I'm going to do, excuse me, handy dandy eraser here. There we go. Now, just to add a little bit of visual interest, I'm going to have this end of the baton stick out just a little bit into the gutter between the things. But you have to be careful. You don't want to make anything too terribly important happening outside the gutter. And you have to be very careful. Like, for example, I don't want to draw the baton like this, because then, they're going to have to reset the page to accommodate for this. So I'm just going to do this tiny little bit out here. And all that the art director or the layout person will have to do is just make sure that it doesn't butt up against the text in the next column over here. Okay. So let's get the basics of now. Because this is Dying Earth and it's a little bit more fanciful and such, I'm going to add some details like this guy's going to be wearing a ring. Actually, let's go ahead and have him wearing 2 rings. And at this point, you're kind of wanting to work loose, and because I am literally right now, in case you hadn't figured that out yet, I'm figuring out some of these details as I go. Sometimes the pictures have basically already drawn themselves when I'm doing a sketch, and all I'm having to do is actually kind of basically access what my brain has already decided it wants to do. And yes, I'm making it sound like I'm just kind of waiting for my brain to allow me to do stuff. Give me just a second, folks. I need some water. There we go. Okay, draw the sleeve of his shirt. An interesting detail I have noticed over the years is I will do detail. I'll draw some stuff like the line that to mentally attach these. But once I've got that line drawn, I literally mentally erase it. And yes, sometimes I do have to go in before I send the sketch and erase some lines so that, because I can't really rely on my art director to be able to make heads or tails out of what's going on in my head, because I know what I want to end up in the final illustration or not. But this is one of the advantages of having an actual art director, which is something that Goodman Games has, is that since he is an artist himself, he has a little bit better understanding of the creative process. So he has a better understanding of, oh, I see there's kind of a light line here attaching this section of the drawing to the other, where I didn't really mean to leave that there. Okay. But he's able to figure out what I mean to be drawing. Okay, so I have your basic baton drawn. Now I have to go through the text real fast and figure out what I want to draw. The most important thing, of course, is I want to create a piece of artwork that every piece you want to do, you want to make it as strong as possible so that if somebody is flipping through at the game store, there's a chance they will see this particular piece of artwork and it will be the thing that sells them on the book. So, okay. While I'm figuring out the details of the baton, I'm going to go ahead and draw some kind of speed line things here. And they both serve the purpose of concentrating your attention on the baton. It also serves the purpose of adding some visual excitement to the background of the picture. I mean, technically, you don't have to do stuff like this. Wait a minute, that's not right. Okay, I screwed that up. Hold on just a second, folks. I got so busy blathering, I stopped paying attention to what I was supposed to be doing. Oops. $1.99 brushes from your local Ace Hardware. They're wonderful. You can get them in a variety of sizes. And they do wonderfully for sweeping away pencil shapings and such. However, I think I'm going to have to be retiring this one and breaking down and buying another $90.99 set of brushes. I don't know. So here we go. Vampiric Strike. The baton transfers the damage inflicted as healing magic to the wielder, although they may not exceed the bearer's regular maximum hit points. So that sounds like it has some potential. What do you think? Now, one of the fun details about Dying Earth is that it's very, very baroque compared to a lot of other fantasy games. Like the magic items in the Dying Earth, if you were to take them into, say, Lankmar, which is a much more down and gritty, people would just be completely freaked out by them. So okay, since this is a vampiric wand, I guess, for lack of a better way of phrasing it, I don't know. I'm going to add some sinister looking details because, like I said earlier, I think this is supposed to be an evil wand.
Got a question for you.
Okay.
What is one art or drawing in the gaming industry that you admire the most and why?
One one drawing.
Yeah, like one piece of art or a drawing that you've seen that you admire the most.
Wow. Uh Man, that's a rough one. Was that you, Odd, that asked that?
Yes, it was.
Wow. You give me all sorts of opportunities to get migraine headaches. I hope you do realize this fact, sir. I would have to say, man, there's an old Jeff Easley piece that he did for a module for D&D, and it had just the most utterly exquisite use of cross-hatching that I had ever seen up to that point. Oh, man. I'm trying to think, seriously. There are some artists that consistently blow me out of the water when I see their stuff. Uh, Jeff Eas- uh, Jeff Easley is one of them. Uh, Jeff Lobenstein and Jim Nelson both, and I don't say this because they're friends of mine, are both, I consider, like astonishingly good artists. Yeah, but I'm afraid I can't really give a good answer for that. Sorry. There's been so many great pieces of artwork over the years that I just don't know where to even start with a lot of them. Of course, you always have, Tim Bradstreet's stuff for Vampire, but you also always have stuff like John Cobb's stuff for Wraith the Oblivion, which was utter nightmare fuel. Oops.
We do have another redemption of a random Joker fact.
Okay, hold on just a second, folks, while I. Okay. Hmm. Here we go. I think a lot of you will already know this, but it's always a fun detail. What do Miss Piggy and Yoda have in common? They were both voiced by the same person, puppeteer Frank Oz. So, like I said, I imagine a lot of you already knew that. I mean, that's fairly common knowledge, but it's still kind of fun.
So Skunk Works asks, do you find did you find drawing and art, or did you find RPGs first?
Oh, drawing first by heart by a huge margin. Um, I've been drawing my entire life. This is actually, being a commercial artist has actually kind of like been my goal for as long as I can remember. I did not discover gaming per se until I happened to stumble across the red box at a gift store in Boardman, Ohio. And but by that time, I had already discovered a lot of what is considered Appendix N. And I was just like, oh my God, somebody made a game out of all this stuff. Because I was already reading like Lord of the Rings and Conan and Elric and such. So it was very much a perfect fit for me. Okay, what time is it? Hey, it's almost time to get out of here anyhow for the moment, folks. Remember, we do not have a show next week, but we will be back for Valentine's Day if you have nothing better to do. Now remember, folks, if you do have managed to be able to spend some time with your better half, do that. You can always just catch us up later on the Twitch channel or on YouTube. We will understand. And in the meantime, I will be contacting the boss to find out what we want to do about the fall season 3. And I will let you know. Okay, so Joan, you were asking about what does it look like to do a sketch? Now you know. And any other questions? We got about 5 minutes here, folks, but I would say this guy's about as far as you can go.
No questions as of right now.
Okay. Tell you what, just to kill the time for the last few minutes, I am going to go ahead and start on this one. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to get very far on it, but hey, this might be an interesting challenge to see how far.
We do have a random Joker fact.
Okay. And we got to use these things up. Come on, stay. Oh, here we go. I heard about this. A dog named Duke was the mayor of Cormorant, Minnesota for 4 consecutive terms before retiring at the age of 91 in dog years. Given the intelligence of some of the small town mayors that I have known over the years, oh, I can believe where Duke probably did a better job. Okay, just in case any of you were wondering what I'm working on now, this is a wind stick devil. I guess they are supposed to be deceptively thin but insanely strong creatures from the dying earth, obviously. I have right now, unfortunately, I only have the information available from my work order. I have not run into them yet during my reread, so I'm afraid I can't give you any more information other than that they're very thin, very strong, and they can easily lift creatures the size of an ox.
So Joan is curious how you come up with the idea for what these creatures look like.
Some of them uh, have fairly specific descriptions included with the work order. Uh, Other times I have a lot more leeway. Uh, a lot of the stuff that I'm doing, like say for um, Original Adventures Reincarnated, they're already specific monsters from the various games. So there's really no question other than what pose do I want to put them in. Going back to the Battletech days, they would send me specific instructions as like, well, this is supposed to be a Thunderbolt 4. And quite often they would include with the work order either not photo reference, but picture reference of, say, a Thunderbolt 4 or even the book. Now, a lot of the time today, in today's world, if I don't know what a particular monster is supposed to look like, and I have no idea, it's called Google. The problem with Google, of course, is you're going to be getting some other artist's interpretation. So then you are left kind of going like, okay, how much of this is the official design for the monster? How much of this is just that artist's interpretation? And then you kind of have to make a quick decision how much of that artist's vision of that do you want to incorporate into your own design? I generally prefer to either be able to more or less do my own design or already have a more or less official from the company, this is what the monster will look like. And then sometimes it will just be a matter of like, okay, well, here's the official illustration. And again, this is probably going to sound horribly egotistical. Can I do better than what that original artist did? Because again, you want to try to do the absolute best you can at all times. Okay, folks, that's about it for me for tonight. So I hope you've enjoyed your time. Thank you for your questions. And we shall see you in 2 weeks.